Welcome to the Wedding Favours podcast with me, Ollie Stevens, otherwise known as the Devon Wedding Singer. Whether you're newly engaged or simply putting the finishing touches on your big day, we're here to help make your wedding everything you've ever dreamed of. Join me and my expert guests as we tackle the ups and downs of wedding planning with less stress and more confidence. If you're after expert advice, insider tips, and a few laughs, you're in the right place. Let's make wedding planning easier together. Hello and welcome to Wedding Favours. It's Ollie Stevens, your host, aka the Devon Wedding Singer. And I'm really pleased that you've pressed play on this episode. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to episode 1, which was the introduction to me and the podcast. Episode 2 is a chat with Jade Cockerill from Ivyhouse Photography. Jade was so lovely to talk to. She is a true professional, not just as a photographer, but as a business person. She is just so knowledgeable, and I'm so sure that you're going to enjoy this episode. We talked about why, when it comes to choosing the right photographer for your wedding day, why communication and connection are just as important as style. We also talked about why it's important to build almost a family of, suppliers around you that you can trust and that you feel comfortable around. Because let's face it, you're going to be hanging out with these people for most of your day, if not all of the day. So it's important to have that connection. And we also talked about why it's important to stay calm when things might not be going to plan. Okay, so this is a very heartfelt, very honest, professional conversation between myself and Jade Cockerill from Ivyhouse Photography. Let's go. Welcome to the Wedding Favours podcast. Welcome to the first episode. And my first guest is the lovely Jade from Ivyhouse Photography. Thank you for coming.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And your first wedding that you shot was when you were 17. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So I was no way means a professional, really, at all. It was my mum's friend, Vicky. She had sort of noticed that I was doing photography during sort of A-levels, things like that. And I think she just said to my mum, would Jade be interested? Yeah. And I was like, oh, I don't know, that's quite a big thing. But, she, I suppose, was not too worried about maybe having somebody more established in the industry. She just sort of wanted somebody there to take photos. And maybe she'd seen a couple of photos that, I'd taken of mum and my parents and family, etc. Yeah. I photographed it and I actually, really enjoyed it. And it's quite funny because, I didn't continue my wedding photography journey at that point. But it's quite interesting. I had definitely, in my career, I started sort of photographing at A-levels, went to university, did photography, ended up hating it after university because I actually think that's the thing. People do go to university and almost don't really enjoy it anymore. They had a purpose there, the creativity aspect. It sometimes gets taken away from you. Okay. So I ended up going into PR and marketing and sort of picking up my photography business down the line. Yeah. But it's really funny how I sort of landed back into weddings because my mum, when mums are mums, they sort of know everything, don't they? I don't know, it's sort of a thing. I don't know. Yeah. She sort of said to me, I always knew you were going to be a wedding photographer. Wow. And I was like, well, you could have told me. So I didn't have to go through all the traumas of finding, but I've also very much enjoyed the process of that and sort of finding my feet a little bit.
And gaining all that experience through the marketing and everything else. That's obviously helped you.
Definitely.
You seem like you're a marketing boss.
Thank you. Yes, no, it has helped me with my business, definitely. Yeah. No way means do I think that I'm, sort of a real marketing top professional or anything like that. But I definitely think that my understanding of marketing and social media and sort of showcasing who I am has definitely helped me in my business. But I've always said to myself that, when I was in my previous jobs, I felt that I was there was just something missing. I did really like my job previously. I was a marketing manager for a house builder, but I just felt that I was sort of lacking something.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be myself. It was almost like there was just, something missing and my purpose. I didn't really have that.
Yeah.
And I basically, things sort of fell into place. I started photographing people and families. I started to pick up my camera again. And then all of a sudden I was like, I can make money from this, and started to love it. Started to get more creative and thought, do you know what? Weddings, like I love weddings.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how Ivyhouse came around, by just...
From Ivy Bridge?
From Ivy Bridge, yeah. So I used to live in Ivy Bridge. At the time when I started Ivyhouse, I was sort of purchasing my first home, and it was a big thing in my life. So, and obviously like with this whole like sort of interest in going in photography and photographing families and people, I was like, well, Ivyhouse sort of makes sense to me. And it was always, I always sort of wanted something that was just bigger maybe than me. I didn't really want it to just be sort of, Jade, Cockerill photography. I wanted it to have, I didn't really know it at the time, but I just knew I didn't want my name. You
were sort of unconsciously future-proofing it so that you can expand maybe. You have more than one shooter. So it's not just you.
Something like that. But at the time it was so small. Like it was just me photographing families. And then, I have always generally had an interest in weddings. Like I've grown up, watching, the classic girly chick flick wedding films, sort of like Bride Wars and Father of the Bride. I was so obsessed with films like that. And I remember like me and my best friend, Melissa, we would basically be sort of quite young talking about, what our weddings would be like one day. And, that sort of proper girlhood, those girlhood chats. And, so weddings, I feel like have sort of subconsciously been something that I've been really interested in.
Quite common for the female species, I think, isn't it?
I think so. And it's just weddings, like who doesn't love a wedding, They're great. Everyone's just having the best time. Everyone's on high spirits, like what's not to love?
And you see it through the whole day as well, like the whole span of it. And from what I do, I see different parts of it depending on whether I get booked for ceremony or going through to the band. And you see, it's interesting to see people's change in behaviour, for obvious reasons. We've had a few drinks and they arrive and they're all kind of like, the tie's on straight and the fascinators are all looking great. And then towards the end of the night, their kind of ties are wrapped around their heads.
Amazing. What I love the most.
And you say things that you're up for a challenge when it comes to photographing. You love a colour bomb. And you love, the piggyback races and high energy.
High energy, it's great. I mean, weddings, like you said, like there's definitely, that story of the day. I'm there to capture it. My approach definitely as a photographer is a sort of fly on the wall, documentary style, step back approach, but also with like a hint of editorial side to it. Like I want people to look at their galleries and see that story throughout the day, but also think like, wow, like beautiful photography. They look at it and go like, during their couple session and go, wow, oh my God, that's us. Like my couples, like on my Instagram grid, because I say this to people who I'm having a consultation with, and they're always like 95% of couples are saying to me, oh, we're not very good in front of the camera. We're quite shy. We don't really. And I say that all my couples pretty much say that. And I was like, if you look at my grid, you'd think that people are sort of so, confident and, they love having their photos taken. But honestly, like those people really were quite nervous, like before, and sort of, I like to think that I'm the person that's going to put them at ease and make them feel comfortable and make them feel themselves.
How do you do that? Is there a sort of a set thing you have, or is it just your personality, do you think?
I think it's a mixture of things, but my personality, so when my couples sort of in terms of the process, I love to sort of meet them via a video call beforehand prior to booking so that we have that connection, to vibe with your photographer is so important. It's, one of the main things when you're looking for a wedding photographer, one of the most important things is to ensure that you get on with them, that your personalities, you vibe off each other. And to sort of have that early on in the process, to get to know my couples in a way that I do, is really lovely. You get to know about their lifestyle, their family around them, their support network, what they do, what they like, their hobbies, interests, that sort of thing. So I have quite a few phone calls with them, video calls prior to their wedding day.
Yeah.
And they might, we have WhatsApp groups together. So they might send me inspo, or they might, ask for advice, things like that. So when it comes to the wedding day, I feel like I've built that connection with them, especially if we've had an engagement session. I love doing engagement sessions because it means that prior to the day, the couple can meet me in person, as well as understand my shooting techniques and, how we sort of create those photos.
Yeah.
It's very much, I love to think that how I do it is almost bringing their personality and love through photos by just getting them to do things. Like, it's not, I hate the word sort of posed or staged. It's not like that. There's definitely direction in there.
Yeah.
My couples sort of need direction, I think, because they're always like, we're feeling a bit awkward. Like, where do we put our hands? Where do we, I don't want to feel like that.
Yeah.
And I don't believe, my couples do feel like that. I think they think that, I want them to think Jade's got our back. Jade's going to let me know when, I need to move my hands or, but the style of it is just getting them to do loads of fun things. And their personality and love for each other basically just comes through.
Yeah.
And it becomes easy. During those engagement sessions, they then sort of know what to do on their wedding day. So when it comes to the couple sessions, they know what I'm going to say or do. So they sort of just do it.
Yeah.
And
or
I'm just there.
What you might disapprove of, or if there's anything kind of little do's and don'ts that they kind of just pick up on.
But we learnt that in the engagement session. Yeah. So when it comes to the wedding day, they're just they're amazing. They're great. They know what to do. And they know me and my personality. So they sort of know that I've got it covered and that it's going to be okay. And that they're just going to have fun and enjoy the moment.
Yeah. And we spoke a minute ago about wedding fairs.
Yes.
You've been to quite a few wedding fairs, I take it? I
have. I mean, I wouldn't say loads, but I have been to a few, myself, with Ivyhouse.
Yeah.
So one that's sort of local to us is the Southwest Wedding Extravaganza show in West Point, and I think they do it in Plymouth as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been a couple of times now. I didn't go this year. I went with a friend this year. My friend Laura, she's recently got engaged. So we went there to have a little look and just sort of support her, I suppose, as a bride. So it was really interesting being on the other side of it this time.
Sure. How do you think, I mean, we said it earlier again, there can often be lots of photographers at wedding fairs.
Yes.
What could you say to a couple that is, when they have that much choice, what kind of things could they look out for in way of, choosing the right one for them? How could they know who would be the right one for them?
Well, I think, as we touched on earlier, I think wedding shows are amazing, but they can be quite overwhelming with a lot of suppliers there, a lot of photographers, like you say. So just to sort of have a mooch around, and I suppose for suppliers to sort of almost respect that.
Okay.
To sort of allow people to have the time to just browse and see. Because as photographers, the initial thing for people is you look at their work and you think, that's a bit of me.
Yeah.
That's lovely. That style really connects.
Yeah.
And a lot of people message me about that. They say love your style. Love, I can really envision, the warmth, the color, it's definitely us.
Yeah.
So that first initial interaction, let's say, will be, they will see your work and love it.
Yeah.
And there's sort of three things when choosing the right photographer.
Okay.
I would say for couples. The one is style, the second is personality, and the third is budget. Because those three things are the main things when choosing a wedding photographer. So obviously you have to love their style and their work. And obviously everybody can look at an Instagram grid or website and see their work, but to message the photographer and maybe ask for, if you're going down the route of doing consultations with photographers, which I would highly recommend, so you can get to know their personality, they can get to know you. Video calls are great for that.
Yeah.
But to ask for full day wedding galleries as well.
Okay.
So that couples can see the style throughout the day.
So they're not just showing the best bits. It's like, okay.
Because your grid is your grid. I mean, and I try to post as much as I can. We're all like, we're all human, like with, running our businesses, it's hard, isn't it, to keep up with it all. But I think that we, show lovely photos as much as we can. But there's only so much. So to show a full day wedding gallery to my couples so that they understand the style and approach to the day is important.
Okay.
So that's the style. And obviously personality-wise, jumping on a video call with them, you can see personality. Hopefully they might have something on their socials which shows their face, shows who they are about. You know.
That's important. I often look at wedding suppliers and I almost want to go straight to finding out who they are, especially if it's a name like yours that hasn't, doesn't say who you are, doesn't say Jade. But it's, I want to go straight to a reel or something that says, okay, that's who that person is. That's not what they look like, but just how you can sort of see how they are, how they would fit into your wedding, and that's important as well, isn't it? Somebody that's going to look and dress professionally,
absolutely,
has the right equipment. There's lots of things that I think one thing that's really important as well is something that I've learned over the years is that responsiveness to, and although it's good to have boundaries, as we talked about earlier again, but being responsive, having a channel that's open to them when they've asked you a question or when they've, when they've come up with something, a new update to the wedding. And acknowledging that as quickly as you possibly can. I think when you start to feel that maybe that supplier isn't as responsive as you'd like them to be, and although there's lots of things going on, especially if it's the peak season and they're quite busy, you kind of have to be a little bit forgiving. But if they take days or even a week to reply, that for me, I think is kind of a bit of a, dare I say, red flag kind of thing. It's like, if they're taking too long, does that mean that they're not really that interested in me? Are they too busy for me? Are they, and I think you said you did something like 38 weddings last year. Is that right?
No, this is for this year.
Oh, this year.
Yeah,
okay.
This year.
Would you say that that's a comfortable level or number of?
I think so. It is my busiest year this year that I've done. Last year I did sort of slightly less. It was around 32.
Okay.
But I think that from sort of discussing in the industry, like I've heard sort of people say that they shoot sort of like 60 weddings a year.
Okay.
And that for me is like, I'm a one-man band, I'm sort of like, I'm that person that, and I prioritize quality in my work for my couples. So in order to do that, I think the whole sort of boundaries and communication thing is also very, very important for couples to understand how I work.
Yeah.
And, but yes, I think that is a sort of between 30 and 40 seems to be, for full-time wedding photographers, seems to be the numbers that I'm hearing. I've asked people, what are you shooting this year? How's it going? And things like that. And it seems to be between those numbers, which is a good amount. And if it's quite spaced out as well, which is nice throughout the year. My first wedding this year was on the 15th of February. So, and my last wedding of the year is the 21st of December.
Nice.
So it's a really good, it's a really good year for me.
That's 38 spread out across sort of 10 months or so. Yeah.
Which is really good.
So in other words, somebody who's busy might not necessarily be, it's a good sign that they are sought after, but if they're so busy that their turnaround times are going to be quite delayed, quite long, that might be off-putting for people, do you think? I think
that, within our industry in terms of photography and videography, different businesses have different turnaround times. But like I said, communication with couples is really, really important. So depending on the time of year is realistically when you might get back your galleries. It could be anything between sort of like, 4 to 10 weeks.
Okay.
Depending on the time of year. Because I think as well that, like I said, like quality for me is really important. So I'm not going to compromise on quality.
Great.
So if it takes me longer, I'm okay with that. And my
Yeah.
couples are okay with that too, because very early on in the process, they understand that I pride myself on quality.
Yeah.
And I won't compromise that. So if it's going to take me another week to edit their gallery, or maybe a week longer than I thought, I will message them and let them know.
Great.
But to have that extra week over a lifetime for their images,
Yeah.
I know what I would rather.
Yeah.
I would rather have my photographer, really look at that gallery and make sure it's perfect. And that is my preference. So, and my couples too.
Yeah.
They're all very, very lovely and so understanding, and they know that it's almost like a creative art for me. And they're all sort of like, take your time. We know that we know you, we know it's going to be great. So
great.
do your thing.
Yeah.
And I love that, to have that trust in my couples is like the best thing ever.
Yeah. That's cool. So the takeaway there is from a couple's point of view, is to really get that conversation going about how,
definitely,
expectations of how long things might take, allowing for a little bit of wiggle room, especially in peak seasons, a peak season. And then just sensing whether that person, that supplier, is as responsive as they think they feel is kind of reasonable.
Yes. I mean, I think that obviously this process for brides and grooms, it's stressful planning a wedding. You have lots to think about, lots of different suppliers. And maybe if you don't hear from a supplier for a while, people do get worried.
Yeah.
They're sort of like, maybe they haven't posted on social media for a while, or, they've emailed them and haven't heard back in months or something like that, They start to worry.
Sure.
And that is, very understandable if you don't hear back from a supplier for a few months.
Yeah.
And but that's where, as a supplier, I think that we sort of have that responsibility.
Yeah.
To set boundaries and just to make sure that couples are aware of how we work. And, I say to my couples, yes, okay, we've got these WhatsApp groups and I love the fact that they can communicate with me, but I might not always be around to reply to you so quickly because obviously, we might be out shooting.
Sure. We
might be, spending time with our loved ones and our family and our friends, because having a balance of life is also really important. If my priority is to not burn out and to prioritize myself and my well-being, because if I do that, then I can give my couples my best self.
Yeah, great.
So, but having that communication where I might not reply to you, but I will do when I'm back in the office. I will reply to you as soon as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And if you can imagine, when you're dealing with 30 to 40 weddings a year, that's a lot of couples to manage. So, it is sort of making sure that communication is there.
And looking for trusted people that are recommended by, so for example, if you had a venue, or if they go to the venue and then they recommend you, that's a pretty big sort of statement, isn't it? We recommend Jade because we worked with her 30 times or 10 times, 15 times last year.
Yeah.
She's always communicative. She's always on time. She always looks professional. And that's the kind of thing that people need to be looking out for as well is, awards, maybe, certain awards, but certainly having that kind of testimonial from venues and other wedding suppliers is a big important thing that they need to look out for, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, the whole choosing the right wedding photographer for you, obviously touching on, the three main things that we spoke about earlier. But the one thing that I hear a lot from couples, I attend a lot of weddings and maybe couples that have been married already, and, you're hearing sort of stories to say, I really wish I sort of like maybe had someone like you, or I'd done a bit more research.
Okay.
Some of them have said to me that, they've sort of gone onto Google, typed in Devon wedding photographer, first one comes up, looks on their website, likes the look of their work, messages them, they say they're award-winning or whatever, and then, have a great bio, 10 years plus experience, message them, and then they're booked without maybe meeting them, or do you know what I mean? So there's that whole thing where I think in terms of my advice for couples is just to make sure that when booking the photographer, you're not just looking on style.
Okay.
Or their bio, or, make sure you meet them and talk to them. And because I say to my couples, like, you sort of have to like me.
Yeah, you're
like,
part of the day.
I'm like the third wheel. I'm literally following you around all day. I'm there. So to have somebody that you really enjoy their presence. And, I like to think that I give that element of like, I bring the element of fun and energy to someone's day when needed, but also bring the element of calm when needed. A wedding morning can be a little bit stressful sometimes, a lot of the time it's actually okay, but sometimes there's that element of like, running out of time, need to hurry up, like ceremonies coming up, and to have the element of like calm. Yeah. And like, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be great.
Talk to me about calm. Let's say, for example, we get to the venue and I don't know, something's not quite out of your control, but something's kind of not right, whether it's the weather or whether it's some sort of technical hitch somewhere along the line. How do you manage? How do you kind of stay calm, and what do you do to get the couple through it and get the results?
I think staying calm is definitely a part of like a photographer's role. Yeah. I'm sort of a big believer in what is meant to be is meant to be. Okay. So if it rains on your wedding day, like, it's okay. Yeah. Like, it's all right. Like, and I sort of try to get my couples to, I say to them, make sure you have a plan A and you have a plan B. Okay. And make sure that you sort of love your plan B just maybe as much as your plan A. A lot of couples want to get married outside. Yeah. Being in the UK, we can't rely on the weather. So to have that plan B, choosing a venue where you have that plan B indoor option and you love it just as much. Because I know that some couples have said, well, we liked plan A, we liked the outside, but the inside, not so much. Yeah. And, what happens on your wedding day if you don't love the ceremony room you're in? So it's really sort of trying to think ahead. But if it rains on your wedding day, it's really, really okay. Yeah. Like, we will still have the best time. You will have the best day. It will be one of the best days of your life. And everything will run as it's meant to. And that's the point, isn't it? Really focus on what is the ultimate point of the day. Yeah. Which is the celebration of your love. They love each other. Getting married with all the people that you could possibly have there around you. Yeah. And something like, the weather or not enough profiteroles or whatever is kind of... It's not really the end of the world, honestly. No. And I mean, a lot of effort and time goes into planning weddings. And a lot of the times, like, brides in the morning, they are so chilled. Like, obviously the run up is stressful. It really is. And I really empathize with that. But on the wedding day, they all just sort of seem to go, it's my day. I'm getting my hair, makeup done. Everything's great. The sun's shining, or if it's raining, well, it's raining. Like, it is what it is. I'm going to marry the love of my life. That's it. And that's what it's all about. And I love the quote of, you will most likely never in your life get everybody that you love in one room again. Yeah. In that moment. So when somebody's sort of standing up doing speeches, your ceremony, etc., you like look around the room and everybody is there in that one moment. Yeah. Will most likely not be together. Yeah. All together again. And then that's where you come in and you take those snapshots of those little pieces of love and those little moments, and what a great job you have. I have the best job. The genuine best job. And that's the thing, it's like those little moments, isn't it, where, like, I don't know, maybe you're with grandparents and you're like holding their hand, or during speeches. I love to get the shot of like sort of, if it's possible, where like the couple sort of sitting down and listening to the speeches. Yeah. And usually they're sort of like holding hands under the table. And if I can just sort of get behind them and get that little, that like sort of like those little touches or those little moments that, they won't sort of like, they'll remember, because it's those, it's not just, it's lovely to get people sort of hugging and laughing and everything like that. Yeah. But those little moments where maybe, you're with grandparents and, I mean, my nan, she's 96. Bless her. Great. Old, shall we? So it's like, I know how, we've had photo shoots with her because I just know it's so important to get those moments, to really, hone in on the fact that no one's really going to be here forever. Yeah. So to be in charge, to be like, have that sort of responsibility to capture those moments. I love it. I think it's really great.
And those little handhold moments and the little pat on the bum and all this, they're all the things that we carry through everyday life, not just on the wedding day. So
absolutely. It's those things where, like, you know, you sort of like turn to your partner, those little there's little moments, like you said, the little wink, the touches, like that's, you know, it's what makes you love one another, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. One of my favorite photographs that I see, wedding photographs, is that groom reaction.
Yeah.
You know, when he kind of turns and sees his bride walking up.
Yeah.
If you can catch those, I imagine they're...
It's really, I mean, I'm quite an emotional person. So when I
get really emotional.
It's wedding days are emotional, you know, like the first look with maybe a family member or your bride squad. And then, you know, you go to ceremony, you're reading vows. And I'm just there behind the camera, like streaming. Like so trying desperately to see, you know, like sometimes, and it's beautiful. Like, you know, some of the ceremonies and the vows that, you know, when they sort of like get handwritten. It's like handwritten love letters, isn't it, to each other? And it's almost like the world stops.
Okay.
You know, so because it's obviously like dead quiet, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they just sat there and stood there at the front of the aisle. And a lot of the time, couples might be quite nervous about that moment, you know, standing at the front of the aisle and reading out all this sort of love that they have for each other, with like everybody watching and, you know, sitting down, all eyes on them. But I think in the moment, I mean, I personally feel it. I feel like they're just sort of there, and you forget that they're just so in this moment, you know, and it's lovely. It's really, really nice.
Well, I think I should probably say for the listeners, if they haven't already guessed or don't know, I'm a wedding singer. So I'm very much at the front as well of things like the ceremony. And I find it really difficult sometimes not to get a little bit choked, you know, and you can feel that intensity and that energy. And you really know when you get a couple that are properly in love, it's like, damn, you know?
It makes you like, oh my gosh, And
you're like, you know, I'm not crying, you cry, you're crying.
Yeah, we're all crying. We're all crying here, and it's fine. And that is it, isn't it? And like, it's just so, I mean, I just think that some people are maybe more emotional than others.
Guilty.
Me too. I'm an emotional person. I'm not, you know, scared to say it. And it's just who I am, you know, and maybe being a creative, I don't know, maybe creatives tend to be more emotional. I don't know.
Possibly.
But to feel that, you know, that connection is just lovely, isn't it? It's that sort of like real heartwarming, heartwarming stuff.
What's the most interesting? Okay, I'll give you something. It was a wedding in Salcombe, and the bride and groom exchanged watches and instead of wedding rings. What's the most interesting thing you've seen?
What, like in terms of exchanging?
Or any kind of thing that's just kind of slightly against the grain or out of the ordinary?
I mean, I think that it's becoming a lot more, let's say, trendy or like on trend to maybe do like first looks with each other prior to the ceremony.
What does that mean?
So they have so they see each other before the ceremony.
Oh, okay.
So they do like a little moment together. Naughty, yeah, it's great. I'm there too. Because obviously I'm like the biggest third wheel ever. But I'm there too. And I do bring it up with some couples who are nervous, who I can feel are quite nervous about the ceremony maybe. So what happens is that, you know, they'll get dressed and ready, suited and booted in their dress, looking beautiful, and they'll meet at a certain location.
Wow.
And I'll sort of capture that moment, and, you know, it's a beautiful moment. It really is. Yeah. And they might sort of do like a private reading together.
Wow.
And they'll sort of be in a room together. I'll leave them to it after a minute.
I've never heard this before.
Have you not?
No, this is great.
Yeah, first looks. So you get like first looks with, you know, family members and bride squad, etc., like we said earlier, but first looks together, it's a beautiful thing. Obviously quite non-traditional, because, you know, the traditional thing is walking down the aisle and, you know, turning around and seeing, you know, your partner.
Yeah. Is it more of a religious thing, do you think, or is that just generally?
I think it's just probably quite traditional, isn't it? Where, you know, the person who's at, you know, the front, and, you know, you might sort of like have that I mean, the one thing I would say is that when I started in the industry, so obviously I've had my business for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So when I was like starting out, I was picking up on things where I was like, should you do that?
Yeah.
Is that, do you need to do that? Because, I say to couples, make sure you're doing things for you. Yeah. Don't just do it because of tradition or, or you feel like you have to do things.
Yeah.
And you can do whatever you want. It's your wedding day, you know?
Yeah.
And like some of the little things I was picking up on was like, let's say the groom being tapped on the shoulder to turn around when the bride is sort of like halfway down the aisle.
Okay.
But like, in my opinion, it's a bit like, well, why wouldn't you watch
the whole thing?
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a family member in the bridal party coming down the aisle. Maybe you want to watch and see everyone's faces. So I just kind of like, that's one thing where I think, I always say to the groom or bride at the front of the aisle, I always say to them, just if you want to watch it, watch it. Like, don't feel like you need to.
Yeah. That's a good bit of advice. So to the listeners and to the viewers.
Do whatever you want to do.
Make it your own.
Do whatever.
I have an example of that, which, the first dance, traditionally, nobody should dance until the first dance takes place. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was playing in the afternoon, late afternoon, evening. And obviously I was banging out the tunes, right?
Absolutely, as you should. Getting the party going for us photographers.
There were these two ladies just kind of near the edge of the kind of dance floor area. And I could see them sort of like,
bobbing
around. And I thought, they're going to go for it in a minute.
I love that.
And then I think they said, I don't know if they said something to me or said something to somebody else. They said, oh, no, we can't do it yet. And I thought, oh, that's really sad that they've kind of been held back by, they're being respectful to the
tradition and
things. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was kind of toying with the idea of saying, just do it anyway, because I'm a bit of a rebel.
Yeah.
But, and there's other things like, don't take off the jacket before the groom does and stuff. I just think, if it's sweltering hot.
I personally don't really agree with those things. I think that the one thing from talking to all my couples, they just love every single person that's there on their day.
Yeah.
And they just want them to have the best time. And they want me to capture that.
Yeah.
My couples just say to me, prioritize candids and people having the best time ever. So that is what I'll do.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you sort of say about first dances and that sort of thing. I had a couple who were actually, Claire and Henry. Claire is a fellow photographer.
Okay.
Amazing. And Henry does video. And they'd booked me for their wedding and they had all these amazing ideas. And their wedding was honestly crazy, so good. Loved every second of it. But they did things not the norm.
Yeah.
And their first dance was, so they got married in a forest.
Nice.
The most amazing place I've ever seen. It was sort of Twilight-y vibes.
Okay. I've not seen it, but I can imagine.
Loved everything about it. But the first dance was done privately in the middle of these woods with their best friends. Their best friends were musicians.
Wow.
And I honestly felt so privileged to be there.
Mm.
They were we're going to do this first dance together, privately, away from people. They obviously did a first dance as well later in the evening, but it was high energy, cannons flying off and, it was epic.
Wow.
But this first dance was so beautiful, so intimate. And that's where sort of they did that because they wanted to. They wanted to have that moment together.
Yeah.
And it was in a very special place to them as well.
Okay.
And the part of the forest where they, go on family walks and things like that. And, it was just really special. And I love that about it, doing things that aren't the norm, doing things because you wanted it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to swear on this podcast, but I think the takeaway from that is beep, tradition.
Yeah. Basically, literally, do whatever the beep you want.
Yeah. And that's great. And let your guests know as well, make them feel comfortable in knowing that, if you want to dance, dance. If you want to, if you're not, kind of caught up in who sits on which side. I like those signs that say, the ones that say, we're all a family now kind of thing.
Yeah,
you can sit on whatever side of the church or the ceremony room you want to sit on. Make your guests feel comfortable because a lot of people haven't been to weddings or haven't been to them for a long time. So those kind of little nudges towards, you know, to heck with tradition, or, you know, we want to personalize it. We just want you guys to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Like really go for that. Make your guests feel comfortable. Yeah.
Definitely. Making guests feel comfortable. And just, I always say that the energy that you bring to a wedding day, the vibes that you have will be like just vibrated across your whole guests.
Yeah.
If you're bringing high energy, your guests will be on high energy.
Definitely, yeah.
You know, if you're like wanting a wedding breakfast where you're coming in and everyone's waving the napkins and, you know, you've got Gimme coming on from ABBA, you know, an absolute classic. I love it. You know, everyone's
Glitter
standing up.
going off
Everything's going, I don't know, you walk in, like I love the TikToks that I see where, you know, the both of them come in and I know the groom's got 2 bottles of Prosecco and he bangs it on the floor and it goes nuts and like,
amazing.
Who's not going to love that?
Yeah.
What, is everyone just going to stand there and go like, what they do? No, they're not.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, oh, this is amazing. So much energy. And I love that energy, you know, and
cool.
to sort of like, you know, give my couples that idea and, you know, they love it. They love it.
Nice. And you shot in Italy last year.
I did, yes. That was for a styled shoot. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a styled shoot in Italy, but definitely amazing experience to do that.
Yeah.
To do, to
a
shoot in
workshop
such a
there as well,
beautiful
didn't you?
place. Yeah, it was a workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a workshop. And such a lovely location. Like, who doesn't love Italy?
Yeah.
You know? Like,
I've not been to that area that you've been to, but
Lake Como,
I agree.
Lake Como. I'm really fortunate. I did a bit of sort of traveling around Italy, and it's definitely a place that I really, really love. You know, so beautiful. And to go out there and just sort of like, you know, go into like a little cafe place and get a glass of wine. Iguana wine is my favourite, by the way. Danielle, if you're listening to this, you'll know. This is my business partner, but on another business. But basically, sitting there with a glass of white wine and just watching the world go by, you know?
Yeah.
It's like genuinely like the most beautiful place.
Yeah.
So yeah, very nice to shoot out there.
So you have experience shooting abroad, and would you say that, you know, for anyone that is going to book you, you've got that kind of nailed down? If you were to...
I definitely think that I would love to experience more destination weddings.
Okay.
I think that I'm definitely like a Devon girl. Like I'm Southwest sort of, I think we live in such a beautiful location. You don't really need to travel too far to get those like, you know, amazing scenic shots if you want to. But I think if you're, you know, thinking about doing a destination wedding or you're traveling, you know, I have a real passion for traveling myself as a person.
Yeah.
So I would love to incorporate more of my work like through traveling and going to these destination weddings. So it's definitely something that now I feel like I'm a few years into my business.
Yeah.
I can sort of start to hone in on a little bit.
Yeah.
And start to maybe put some things in the diary where I can do some traveling as well as working abroad.
Yeah.
Now that sort of Ivyhouse is sort of, you know, thriving in its little space, a little bubble down in the Southwest. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. And speaking of Southwest and Ivyhouse, you had a bit of a kind of a boost in your profile, would you say, last year? Am I right?
I don't know. Yeah. Are you talking about the video that went viral?
Yes, absolutely I am.
Because there's only one thing I could think of when you said that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'd say a little bit of a boost. Yeah.
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 2.7 million was the last I checked on your...
On Instagram.
On Instagram.
But on TikTok, it's got 17 million.
17 million views on TikTok.
How many people? I don't even know how many people that is. That's quite a lot, isn't it?
That's 17 million. That's a lot.
Yeah, it was, the video went viral. It was a lovely moment between me and my best friend, Laura.
Yeah.
And she got engaged and I was there to capture it.
You secretly filmed it.
Secretly filmed it.
Photographed it and filmed it, yeah.
I did, yeah. And do you know what? Like the when I post some videos, I looked back on it and honestly, it's not actually like a great video. It's really funny. It's very, very rickety and a lot of I think it's really funny. A lot of the comments, I mean, are wonderful. So much support from it. It's amazing. And it's a lot about our friendship.
Okay.
Because the video itself, sort of I'm hiding behind a rock and I'm, you know, sort of stressing a bit.
Yeah.
Because I know I photographed a lot of proposals, but this is my best friend. And obviously the link with the emotion,
yeah.
I was quite overwhelmed. And there's just a lot going on, and I was just and then I sort of started photographing it, and then the moment happened and I could see, Ryan pointed me out to Laura and you could see her face. I was looking through the viewfinder and I could see this moment happening. She ran up to me, I ran up to her, we got a great big hug. And it just went viral. It went, and when I looked back at the video, like I said, it wasn't really like a very great video, very sort of like my hair was flying in the video, and I had a hairband on my wrist. Okay. So many comments were like, "Girl, use your hairband," and I was like, "I know, but would you believe me if the wind wasn't around 5 minutes before that?"
Doesn't that whole video just kind of sum up what your job is? Like, it wasn't staged.
No.
And it was, you capturing something that was really very special.
Very special
and,
to me, yeah.
All right, your hair, you're not going to get your hair in the shots on the wedding day, but
and it wasn't in the photos, it was fine. It was just the sort of POV because of my glasses, basically, because it was shot on my glasses. It basically sort of, it was the POV of it in it. But it was just such an amazing moment to have. And I love the fact that, Laura and Ryan just had that moment and I could be there. And the fact, I thought putting it up, the bog standard 200 people that used to look at my TikTok would see it. I never thought anything of it. So when it went viral, it was a bit nuts, a bit crazy.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. What's your favorite venue? I'm just going to ask that.
Oh my gosh. That is a straight up question.
Yeah. I was going to say, what's your favorite sort of location or type of, but what's your favorite venue? Let's just go for it. Have you got a top 3?
I mean, I'd say top 3, but I think that, I've got lots of lovely new venues this year, venues that you aspire to work at. Mm-hmm. So definitely looking forward to that. But I think in terms of the venue itself, I photographed at, again, for a workshop, a place called Uridge, up in the Cotswolds. Beautiful, absolutely stunning. Visually, that was, just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But I think like down here in the Southwest, for me, it's the venues, like the people that are there, I think are really important as well. Yeah. So visually, it can look amazing.
Yeah.
So you've got like, I don't know, Pines House, Upton Barnes, beautiful, beautiful place. Or you've got the likes of sort of like Tunnels Beaches down on, the coast, Sandy Coast. You've got, it depends on like the style and the vibe that you want for your day. Obviously, so many different types of venues.
Yeah.
But for me, like the favorite venue thing sort of like comes in as well to the, almost like the staff there as well.
Definitely.
Because, which I also think is really important for the couples. Because, like if you have an amazing team around you, you can have like the most beautiful, beautiful venue, but potentially things aren't quite run properly or, I don't know, I just maybe get along with the staff a lot more at certain locations. And I think, do you know what? They're really kind. They're really lovely. It makes a massive difference. And, I think to myself that couples-wise, like choosing these particular places, they obviously like fall in love with venues, don't they? They go in there and they immediately go like, wow, this is really beautiful.
Yeah.
And then you meet the team and then they're lovely. They're amazing. They're so like, there's somebody there, they're, I don't know, messaging you to see how you're getting on. And like on the day, they're really attentive and giving you all these ideas and recommendations. And, I think as a supplier, it's really great when they're lovely.
It makes a big difference. And I've seen, I've been doing this for quite a while now, and I've seen venues kind of gradually change and improve. And places like you mentioned, Upton Barn, they've just gone like,
they're so lovely.
They're amazing.
They're so lovely.
It just when you arrive, you feel like you're kind of part of the staff in a way. You're part of the family almost as well.
Like you get there and they give you a hug. How are you? How are you doing? And it's great because we don't really see very many people. Well, I know we do like on wedding days, but it's like, it's what we were saying about earlier, wasn't it? About when you work for yourself.
Yeah.
Like So just to sort of like have that, when you turn up to a wedding day and the suppliers that
Yeah.
and you have like this dream team of people, you think, oh my God, it's going to be the best day ever.
Yeah.
And I love when couples can feel like that too.
Yeah.
When they can think to themselves like, we've got the best team here today.
Yeah.
Absolute dream team. Jade works really well with a videographer because, I recommend sort of videographers that I work with.
Sure.
Love their style. They sort of match with mine.
Yeah.
You've got an amazing makeup artist, hairstylist, an amazing venue team. And, that is really in like the best thing, isn't it? When couples can say, I have the dream team.
Yeah. And speaking of other suppliers, do you try and find out who you're going to be working with on the day? Do you kind of, would you recommend that would be a thing that couples should share with you and people like me, like share who you're working with, make sure that everyone's kind of understands how each other works, that kind of thing?
I do have a recommendations list for couples, which basically it's like a welcome guide that I send out, which basically just has like tips and things as well as recommendations of suppliers. And there's a lot on there in terms of sort of like makeup artists, hairstylists, DJs, entertainment, etc. And I think that to have people that you sort of like your suppliers maybe recommend is great. Obviously doing your own research is fabulous. Like we might not have met, we wouldn't have met everybody in the industry.
Of course.
So it's only people who we know, who we love working with. But I definitely think in terms of like photography and videography, to have like a team, somebody who's maybe, or even if you just get on, if you've met them, like I've met some videographers where I thought, do you know what, you're a really nice person. You're really great and your work is fabulous.
Really easy to work with and work around because it's important that you're not in each other's shots.
No. And understanding, I think that's, and to be like respectful as well. So it is about working as a team. It's not a, it's me and it's you. You're working as a team because it's also about the flow of it as well. To make sure that, you don't want to be saying to your couples, can you do that again? Can you do that thing again?
Could you
where
imagine asking your friends to redo that engagement shoot?
It's not going to happen, is it?
That you filmed.
No, it's a moment.
17 million. You couldn't do that again, could you?
No, you can't. And it's sort of like, it's you have working together, side by side. Going in with a bit of a plan. I might say, like, we might sort of be working together with a videographer, and then I might just say to them, is there anything else that you want to do with them? Sort of really lead the way. Because the photographer tends to sort of take a bit of, the sort of like lead approach. Because obviously the videographer, like I like to create movement with couples because staying stationary and sort of posing isn't really my thing. So having a lot of movement and, couples just enjoying the moment and having that real sort of like love and energy is important, and having that movement for the videographer. So when I'm with a videographer, I will take into consideration what I'm getting my couples to do.
Nice. Because
that will help them. And it means that my couples, we're not going to be like, okay, can you do that again? Or can we do this? It's not going to take forever as well because, I don't love the idea of taking my couples away for hours on end for photos. I want them to be a part of their wedding day. I don't want it to take a really long time. And the grooms especially sometimes are a bit like, they don't want it to take a long time, which I totally appreciate. Some of them are probably more a bit nervous maybe than their partners, and but after a while, they're fine. They sort of
so you don't do a lot of kind of stand still kind of posed?
I wouldn't say so.
No.
I mean, I do think that it's important to sort of like get those really intimate close shots together. So maybe they're just sort of like, sort of standing facing each other, having a little chat, maybe holding hands, like those little touching moments, thing. And then we'll sort of go into like lots and lots of movement, getting them to do stuff. And that's where sort of it's great in terms of for the videographer. Have you ever had a request from a couple to do a kind of sort of a certain shoot that you weren't quite sure of? Like maybe they'd seen a trend or maybe they'd seen something that was kind of they thought would be a good idea, and then you were like, Well, I sort of, my couples that book me, I suppose, they are maybe like a little bit trendy. They're like in the trends,
Okay.
like they're on Pinterest.
Yeah.
They, you know, are looking at the sort of vibe and styles that are coming in. And so they sometimes do know what they want. They might message me and say, oh, can we do something like this?
Yeah.
You know, can we do smoke bombs? Yes, as long as your venue allows it. You know, can we do sparklers? Okay. Can we do champagne popping? 1,000%. You know, go out and buy some cheap bottles from Aldi.
Yeah.
You know, unless you want to buy the Moe, but
okay.
I doubt it. Spray that and like sort of waste it. But I think that in terms of trends, I've had somebody in the past, which I thought was so lovely. She had a photograph from her mum and dad's wedding day. Okay. And she wanted to recreate it.
Wow.
And it was beautiful, really.
Yeah,
like such a nice sort of moment. Like she sent me that. I love like old style photography, film and everything like that. So I find it fascinating. Yeah. You know, looking back through like my mum and dad's wedding album and like looking back through old photos and the styles that it was at. Yeah. And she wanted to recreate that. And I thought that was brilliant. And I was like, yeah, of course we can.
Of course.
Of course. Yeah. Absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah. So generally you want to go along with what they've requested.
I'm quite open. Yeah, 1,000%. Maybe if something like, I would say like very much isn't my style, or I don't know, like I've never really had something where I've said, no, let's not do that, to be honest. I can't really imagine anything that isn't. Like,
Is it
I'm
still
really
in fashion to kind of, all the groomsmen to lift the bride on their side? Is that kind of a thing?
If they want to do that, then great. I mean, a lot of the time I love it when the groomsman like picks up the groom and like chucks him up in the air. Wow. I do sometimes have to ask permission because I do love that like high energy approach. And like, it sort of like happens during the groomsmen getting ready section. And then there's a second section in the day where I take off the bridal party, like for a little moment, usually sort of like bridegroom, their groomsmen, bridesmaids, maybe some friends that they love. And we'll go off and, I don't know, shake some champagne sprays and we'll, you know, the groomsmen will be throwing them up in the air and things like that. Yeah. Or another one that I love to do is sort of, I get the bride and groom at the front and all their friends are behind and we're sort of like whispering and being like, you know, what they don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. And then they sort of like run up to them, pick them up, like just give them like the biggest hug. And it creates the best photos, like those like really in the moment, non sort of staring at the camera sort of thing. Yeah. It creates a really nice natural moment for everybody, just having the best time. Yeah. But yeah, the whole picking up thing, I mean, if they want to do it, no worries. Great. Yeah, I'll be there to capture it. Nice. That's it. So it's I don't really have very many that I haven't, not at the top of my head, think that, you know, I've said no to or anything like that. Like if they want to do something, I'm open. Yeah, great. And I think in sort of like photographer's defense, if you like, I mean, over the years, I've heard a few, not many times, but a few people say, oh, you know, they want £1,800 just to come and take some bloody photographs. And you're like, they're not all from Yorkshire, but you know, but it's like, it's more than that, isn't it? It's way more than just turning up and just taking photographs. I mean, like, as you said before, you're a part of the day. You're kind of the third wheel, as you put it. You are, it's everything that you can tell me, but it's from that moment that they meet you to you kind of respecting who they are, to doing the video, the Zoom calls, the WhatsApps, and then an engagement shoot, if that's included, and then arriving on the day. I mean, it's just, there's so much more to a photographer, which is why I said I find myself defending you guys because of, you know, what some of the sort of maybe narrow-minded people would say. Maybe. And I think that for people who like question pricing, which is why the budget thing comes in, you know, the making sure that you find a photographer that was within your budget. Everybody has a different budget. Yeah. So, but I think that once you have your budget and you know how much you're going to spend, it's finding the right photographer that fits that. You know, what are your priorities? Yeah. And I think that the understanding that a photographer can be way more than just turning up and taking photos. Yeah. You know, as in like I take my job very, very seriously. And I love the fact that I can be there, a part of people's day. And to have to wear a lot of hats, I think, is important. You know, I could just turn up and take a step back and just sort of be there, not really interact with anybody very much, not telling people what to do, sort of like, you know, leaving people feel stranded. But I don't do that. You know, I like to be a part of people's day. I like to, you know, be the calm in the storm in the morning for the bride. You know, doing up the dress. Countless occasions, you know, when things are stressful, you know, you're doing up the dress, you're steaming dresses potentially, like you're whilst in the mix of doing things.
I've been tying grooms' ties.
You're touching up makeup for brides, you know, and I mean, I had a bride and groom last season, Laura and Toby, and we went out for a couple shoot, and it was at Deer Park, lovely venue, love Deer Park, and it was slightly muddy, and I remember saying to them, it was like, you know, that beautiful long grass with the oak tree. And I remember saying to them, it's a bit muddy. Are you okay with it? Yeah, fine. You know, after a few bottles of Prosecco, the smoke bombs and everything, we're on high energy. And I think she thought, yeah, fine, no worries. We came back out, and it was a little bit muddy on her dress. And I was like, what should we do about it? And she was like, yeah, let's just go wash it off. I'm in the bathtub washing the mud off the bride. And like, it was just the funniest thing. And that's, you know, and it's like, don't worry, it's okay, we'll get it out, you know. And it's like those little moments where, you know, I don't have, like, it's not because it's just because I'm there. You know, you are like the third wheel. You're the person that's probably, you know, going to spend the most time with the couples, and you want them to enjoy their day as much as possible. So having that like high energy, that positivity, that calm in the storm, you know, that moment to let them be, to let them just have a little moment to themselves. Like, but also equally to engage with family and friends, asking if they want photos, you know, chatting to people, being a friendly face. You know, you do sort of have to be that happy, bubbly go person. Rounding people up for group shots, you know, being the...
And they're not going to be as kind of compliant if you were a moody kind of, you know, strict kind of teacher type person who's, come on then, right, you lot, you know.
You do have to, I sort of say, like, you know, you do sort of have to be quite, I take the sort of happy, go, lovely approach. But to get the group shots done is, like, my couples don't want to be standing around for hours. So, and, you know, and I'm working for the couple, you know, so I want to make sure that they're spending enough time with family and friends and enjoying their day rather than, so my job is to get group shots done as efficiently as possible. You know, so it does take sometimes I think I need a megaphone.
Right.
So just get a megaphone. Like, should I just do that? Because by like mid-season, my throat is like, you know, my voice is sort of going. Usually so I do say to my couples, sort of dedicate a member of their bridal party or groom's party or just somebody. Maybe it's like a family member where they don't mind being the runner, the announcer, you know, everybody please go outside for group shots, that sort of thing. The person also will maybe help me gather groups. So I don't know who people are. I'm very particular with my couples. I say, please, can you write down the names of the people that you want in shots? So I can say, okay, you know, bride, groom, Laura, John, Bob. You're in the shot. And then your runner goes and gets them. And then the runner has the second group ready for me. Amazing. So that we can sort of do like a bit of a conveyor belt. Without that, without knowing the names, without having a runner, without having that sort of support, it can take a long time. So for me, it's being as efficient as possible when it comes to that.
And not holding them up from being at the bar or just generally being...
Well, that's the thing. So my theory is I get everybody in a full group shot if the couple want it. And then once I've got everyone's attention, they're looking at me because they're like, right, what next? You know, what does the photographer want? You know, usually it's sort of immediate family members and maybe sort of the bridal party. And I'll sort of say, those people, please hang back for photos. Everybody else can go to the bar. And then the people there, I'm like, right, guys, let's get this stuff sorted. Like, let's get this done. And it works. It does work really well. If somebody obviously goes to the toilet and goes to the bar, then, you know, there is a bit of running backwards and forwards. But my couples, they love it when sort of there's somebody there to ensure that nobody's running off to the toilet or, you know.
It's a great bit of advice then. So make sure that if they're not booking you,
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it'd be great if everyone could, but if they're not booking you, then make sure that between them and their photographer, they've got somebody that they can, as a runner, as we can call it, get somebody that can round up those key family members or whoever the photographer needs next.
Who's next.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, it works for me. It helps me.
Yeah.
I can imagine that it would help other photographers in that way. It just allows the day to run a little bit smoother, because that is sort of my priority, to make sure that the day does run smoothly. There's a nice flow.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like the photos are taking up all day.
Yes.
Because having, if you can imagine sort of like living your day-to-day life and not having cameras in front of you, then all of a sudden the biggest day of your life, getting married, you've got cameras in front of you, and it can be, I only assume, quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
So for me, I want time to be able to step back and capture those, really, in the moment shots, rather than standing there doing, lots and lots of group shots.
And that's so important, isn't it? That the couple especially can be in the moment without, no disrespect, without you kind of
without being there, going around. And I want them to have that moment with their family. And it's also important to consider on timings. So when my couples give me a list of group shots, I say to them, sometimes there might be 30 on there.
Yeah.
And I'll say, I will do anything you want. I think that group shots are very important for your day if you want them. But consider that if you've got like 30, let's say, a group shot takes a couple of minutes to round everyone up. It's a bit quicker if you have a runner and if it's moving quickly. But, you might be stood there for an hour. Would you like to be stood there for an hour on your day? A lot of them go, maybe we'll cut the group shots down from, 30 to maybe 15. But I say to them, you don't have to cut them. Why don't you move it to the bit of a lull period during the, after the wedding breakfast, there's like a bit of a lull period, isn't there?
Yeah.
Maybe where there's like, maybe your lovely music playing and then everyone's sort of outside having a mingle. There's that time where the couple do have chance to sort of mingle with everybody. So we can sort of round people up there and do them then.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to be in one.
No, that's good.
One time.
Good advice. I mean, obviously you've got lots of weddings booked up this year.
Yeah.
What's maybe, I don't know, tell us about an exciting wedding fair you might be going to, or a project. I mean, you have a project you mentioned earlier with a business partner.
I do, yeah. So I'm sort of going into, or am in sort of business with my friend Danielle Veach, also fellow wedding photographer. And we have started up a sort of community for female wedding creatives.
Great.
It started on the trip to Italy, where we bonded basically over drinking a lot of Lugana white wine. And we just had the best time. And we just sort of really realised that we had the same sort of purpose and what we wanted out of the future, and how we had a real vision, and that we wanted to sort of help other female creatives. Yeah. And just create that bit of a girlhood. To have that, to have people around you that support you is, I think, amazing. Yeah. And that's why we started the Wedding Girls, also known as TWG. But if you want to, you can follow us on Instagram, The Wedding Girls. It's for, creatives. So photographers, videographers, content creators. Yeah. But it's very, very exciting.
And it's supportive. I love that, and that's what this podcast is about as well. It's supporting. Yeah. That's why, that's why I'm not just doing it on my own here, trying to, it's bringing people like yourself in that are going to, impart their knowledge and their experience and big up and support, which is what we all need to do more in life in general, We do. We absolutely do. Yeah. Having like community over competition. Yeah. Any day of the week. Yeah. To support each other is just the best, isn't it? And to have people around you that's, just support your business, and, you can work off each other, and, just surround yourself with people that are just positive is just, I think, the best thing for anybody, really, whether it's business or personal life, isn't it, really, Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, Jade, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed hearing all about Ivyhouse photography. People can follow you on social media. Yeah. At
Ivyhouse photography. Yeah. Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go and check out that 17 million view
Gosh, yeah.
video on TikTok.
Maybe, yeah.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of I hope you have a wonderful season of weddings. And
thank you. I'm so excited. I can't wait to get stuck in. Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Wedding Favours podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Please give me a follow on Instagram at olliestevens.music and at Wedding Favours Podcast. This podcast is produced by Steve Hindley at iNarrator.